Hey lads, what's the crack? Nyla here, and today we've got Shoulders by Shane Koyczan. So you guys liked the video I did on Places by Shane Koyczan. Check that out if you haven't already. At the end of the video, obviously. And it was Earth Day on Wednesday, so I am going to do a kind of environmentally themed video, which is going to be a poetry reaction because I do like me some poetry and you guys seem to enjoy the last poetry reaction. So, without further ado, let's get into Shoulders by Shane Koyczan.
Like many, I love to look at the stars. I love the fact that ours is just one among many. What I love about astronomy is that our constellations tell a story. Our constellations were born from mythology. Mythology was our first attempt to understand the world.
So very quick fire. First impressions, by the way. It's very quick fire. He's going very quickly through the words. It's quite hard to keep up, but yeah, the story is just about the stars so far. It's very pretty. It's brought you in quite well. I like the animation on the video, mirroring the meaning. I would say like the actual title and the like by part at the start, like Shoulders by Shane Koyczan, that made me kind of want to click off because it's a very basic backdrop that you'd Google like night sky or galaxy or something and you'd get that backdrop, and then the font, and like the animation of it like fading and coming back and all that, very basic. It looked like standard, almost PowerPoint-ish. So that's a bit of a criticism, which I am surprised I have because I like Shane Koyczan a lot. But it's not his poetry there; it's his editing skills or whatever. Let's go.
In which we live, we put a God in everything, and those gods would give us our reasons. Why is the sky blue? Who chose blue? The gods. How come men have nipples? It's the will of the gods. Why does...
This is a very good point. I like that it's explaining the history of like religion. It's interesting. I'm sure it's going to develop on this, and I like the fact that it's asking good questions, and you're like, that's a point. That's a point. And then yeah, the repetition of the will of the gods. It's pretty cool. It's kind of, it ties in with like back then that was the answer you'd always get. Like if you didn't know the answer, that's the answer you give. Which is quite a negative. It kind of gives a negative meaning. It doesn't have to be negative, but like it gives a bit of a negative outlook on religion there. Let's keep going.
This wine tastes so good. There's a God in it. And for a while there was not a single thing that the gods could not explain. We believed that their anger gave us lightning, their despair gave us rain. We whispered our desires to them, believing that their charity would sustain us. But those gods were just stories. But stories became a large part of how we learn. They burn lessons into our memories.
Very interesting. Tying in storytelling here now. It does seem to be making a good progression and a very clear progression. I'm sure storytelling is going to go on to another subject. I also want to flag, I like the background music in this. It's quite a bop. Like you see me like nodding my head along to it. It's quite a bop, and it's not. It doesn't drown out the words at all. It's very well balanced, but I would expect that. Like he is quite a professional poet. Let's keep going.
They become a part of how we remember, and we can remember almost everything. Right down to that first unbearable bee sting. When we learn that this tiny blue marble we call the world has rules. Rule number 1, don't fuck with the bees. An unforgettable lesson brought to you by your memories. I remember that I grew up loving mythology. I remember the story of the Titan Atlas, who is also the god of astronomy.
I like it. I like it a lot. It's a very interesting way to write a poem where it's a very storytelling basis. He's bringing in an anecdote here as well. Um, it's very interesting. I like this is so interesting as well from like a psychological point of view, like the facts that we learn through stories. I do marketing, and there's a big section of marketing which is storytelling to get you to buy things, to get you to remember things. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I like that he's tuned into those kind of aspects. It's very it's a very educated poem. Um, yeah, but it doesn't alienate people, I don't think. So he seems to have walked that line very well. Let's keep going.
Original global positioning system sending sailors safely home by telling them which constellations to keep starboard. He taught us about the stars. He did all this while he held up ours, our pale blue dot. But Atlas is caught between two different tellings of his story. In the first, he leads a rebellion against Olympus and is then sentenced to hold the heavens on his shoulders for eternity. In the second story, he is chosen to be the guardian of the pillars that hold up the earth and sky. I prefer the second story. It means that the world is not a punishment, but rather...
That's so interesting, the fact that he gives both stories and says I prefer the second one because it's not a punishment, it's like a privilege. That's so interesting. And yeah, like it hasn't alienated me despite me not knowing a lot about classics, like classical studies. I never did anything with classical studies, and yet I'm not alienated by this. It does seem very heavy on the like knowledge aspect and the teaching aspect, but I guess that reflects the poem as well, where it's talking about storytelling, teaches us things and learning lessons, like the bee lesson and things like that. So it's very logical. I like it a lot. Let's keep going.
A responsibility. But how can just one be charged with such a burden? How can just one be responsible for all this? When I think of Atlas, I think of a single drop of rain. I think how unfair it would be to hold a single drop solely responsible for making the entire world clean again. I remember how my grandmother tried to explain our world to me.
Very predictable that he's going to continue on from this and then go on into the theme of like we're not the only ones holding the world, we all hold the world, we all have to work together to save it. I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing that it's so predictable. Probably not a great thing, unless there's going to be some random turn here. Let's keep going and find out.
World to me, she told me a story. She said the ground and the sky, they love each other, but they don't have arms or rain. That's just how they hold one another. I began to see how the earth and sky need each other, but I wondered about us. In this perfect design, where do we fit? Which piece of the puzzle are we? Like constellations, I began to see a connection between dots. I numbered my thoughts and drew lines from one.
I like that he's looping back there. Back to the constellations and the stars. That's very clever.
To the next, I began to see us in the context of a bigger picture, sharpening the blur slowly into focus. We are Atlas. I saw that this pale blue dot, this one world, is all we get. There will be no reset button, no new operating system or downloadable upgrade. We will not be allowed to trade in our old world for a new one with climate control or better fuel efficiency.
I do have to say, from the start, I wouldn't have known, and I do know because I did a bit of research. I know that this is suitable for Earth Day, hence why I'm doing it. But I wouldn't have known from the start that this is where it's getting to. So it is interesting that it's just progressed. And I like that it linked back, because if it didn't link back, it's a bit like, okay, but what was that original story for? Like, just so that you could get here, you could have just started here. But I do like that he linked back to the start with the constellations and stuff. But I wouldn't have known that this is what the poem's about which was the same with places. So it's obviously his style to do it like that, and it's an interesting way of doing it. I do like it. Let's keep going.
Get one shot at this. Dismiss all reports of second chances, we get one. And yet we draw advances on our future as if we won't one day be held accountable. We will.
Yeah.
We are. The human race.
I do have to pause it there, I'm sorry. I just love his tone. Like, this is something that's great about spoken poetry rather than just reading poetry, is that you get the tone, and that was really good tone. It's like, we will. We are. It's like regretful. A little bit, like just a twinge. And just, oh, the emotion in those two lines. And I mean, it makes you feel more emotion as well, and it breaks the flow as well, that it goes into the emotion like that. Very nice.
Runs toward a finish line emblazoned with the words too far and wonders, will we ever cross it? Have we already? We are faced with a seemingly impossible task, and it's okay to be afraid. Our dilemma stands before us like a mountain carved into a blockade. The sheer magnitude of our problem would be enough to dissuade anyone. How do we save?
I love how real this is. It's so, like, yes, literally this is the issue, that it feels just so insurmountable. And the fact, I liked the image of the cars on the highway, on the road, and they're just going, and like their destination is going to be too far. Like, that's when there's a line, and that's going to be too far. Oh, it's so real though as well. Oof, because we're just plowing ahead, and then at some point someone's going to say, "Oh, we just passed it. We just went too far." And it's like, oh, it's so. This issue is like so close to me, close to my heart. Oh gosh, it's so tragic. And I do like the fact that he's addressing the emotions. He's educating. So originally he's educating us. He's giving us good metaphors and analogies that help us to understand it, understand the issue better, and now addressing the emotions.
World. We lay in our beds curled into question marks, wondering what can we do? Where do we start? Is hope a glue crazy enough to hold us together while we're falling apart? The burden seems immense, but we can do this. We must take the martial arts approach to loving our planet, love as self-defense. Forget about the cost.
That's a very good metaphor. But also, I still really don't like the font. I wish they'd change the font. It just doesn't suit it. It really doesn't.
No other thing as worth saving as this. Nothing more important, nothing as precious. This is home. All of our stories start and end here. We are sheltered within an atmosphere that has given us every breath we will ever take. Every monument we will ever make has come from the flesh of our planet. Water like blood, skin like soil, bone like granite. It is not a myth. There is no debate. Facts are in. Fact is, there's never been any question. We are facing crisis.
I like his build. He gets like rapid fire and really builds it very well. Like, you don't notice it's building until it's like being really built up. Oh, it's very effective, and I think he does use it in quite a few of his poems, and that just everything cuts. And if you've seen any of my music reactions, I love that in music. Same here. I love it in the poetry. Really, really captures your attention. Um, the imagery was really effective as well, and the child, like they talked about, he was talking about like that we begin here and stuff like that. We start here, as in you're a child here. Um, but it also, if there are any parents watching this, then they think, oh, future generations. It like keys into that, where it's like maybe the world won't burn in this lifetime, but save it for future generations type thing. It kind of ties into that a bit. Let's keep going. Crisis, it's not a myth. There is no debate. Yes, I like it a lot.
We dismiss the truth not because we can't accept it, but because having to commit ourselves to change is a scary prospect for anybody. The most alarming part of the statement "we are facing crisis" isn't the word crisis. It's the word "we." because those two letters take responsibility away from
Forever.
one and rest it squarely on the shoulders of everybody. We are Atlas now. But our strength will come from finding a way to share in shouldering the responsibility of turning the impossible.
It took us like 3 minutes to get there, but yes, I called it. We be Atlas.
Into somehow, we will do this. We can do this. We can dismiss apathy. We can reject uncertainty. We can be the new chapter in our story. We will not see change immediately. We must act in faith. As the hour hand grips the minute hand and they land on the 11th hour, we must believe like the seed that change is possible. The seed never sees the flower. It grows knowing that it must become more than what it was.
That's a very nice analogy. The seed never seeing the flower, because it is like future generations, all that stuff. It's like the things we do now are going to help the future. We might not see it. We might never see a time where we've averted this crisis. But doesn't mean we don't have to do something about it. I like the analogy. Very good.
Change is because in growth all of its potential can be unlocked. Change is like rain. It starts with a single drop. Just one. Like our pale blue dot. Caught in an endless waltz called gravity, we circle the sun wondering who, if anyone, left the light on. We are constellations drawn upon the earth. We are connected to one another. We are bound. We must behave as the arms that connect the ground to the sky. We must try to be more like the rain. Our stories may differ.
I like that link with the arms. It's good that that's being brought in as well. There's a lot of links to the earlier parts which make them relevant now. Which is a very good technique to use. It's quite a common technique, but it's a very good technique to use. I mean, otherwise it's like, why did you even have that section? But yeah, it's like linking things. My English teacher actually called it like, you're not it's not building blocks where you like just put a block down, you put another block down, it doesn't really matter on the order. Like, it is all linked. There's a reason for this to be after this. Like, that's how you have the progression in a story, an essay, poem, whatever. Like, there should be a reason that this section is exactly where it is. So that's linking to this. And I like the fact that it's saying it begins with a single drop as well, because it gives us that idea of there's all this harping on about we can do it, but it's like, if no one else is doing it, you can do it. You can like start it. You can be that single drop to make a difference. And it also brings into like that kind of cliche of like a drop in the water makes ripples, or stone in the water makes ripples. So I think it ties into that as well. It's all very clever.
Our goal is the same. How do we save our pale blue dots? We act as the rain, realizing that each individual drop is as equal and important as any. We act as one.
Yeah.
Now we are many.
Bit long, I will say that. That is kind of a critique. I don't know if it quite pulls off the length it is. It does take a very long time to get to the actual point. I mean, and I am kind of fishing for something to critique about this poem, because I do love Shane and I want to not just be like flooding with compliments for Shane, but I would say that the meaning was very clear. At the end, the links were very useful and they were very well done. I think that I actually just realised, like, they showed the constellation and Atlas being in the constellation, right? So like, we are Atlas, and that was mirroring that. I didn't actually notice that at the time when it was there, but I just got that. So it's showing that we are Atlas. And also I like the emphasis on how the Earth is a responsibility, not a burden, not a punishment. Looking after the earth is a responsibility. And the likeness to Atlas, very good. Good use of imagery at times. Yeah, it was weird because at times I thought the video was very well made, and then at other times I was like, okay, hon. Usually when text came in, to be fair. But yeah, it's interesting because it's quite self-aware as well. It brings in storytelling and how that teaches us things. And then this whole poem is a story that's teaching us something. So that's pretty cool. It's quite self-aware, nice little fourth wall break-ish type thing. Yeah, everything else I think I said during my commentary of the poem. So I would like to thank you for watching. If you do like this kind of content, please leave a like down below. It'll let me know that you want me to do more poetry reactions, which I'm happy to do because I do love my poetry. So leave some suggestions in the comments if there's anything particular you'd want me to react to. I have reacted to places before, so please do check that out. If I'm like grading it against places, I'd say places is better. I did really enjoy places. And yeah, guys, take care of the earth, turn off some lights, all that good stuff, recycle, all the good stuff. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Slán!